Welcome to Fellowship Bible Church's Sermon Spotlight, where we take a deeper dive into the sermons each and every week, sharpening our minds with practical truth and encouraging one another in our daily Christian walk, all through the joys of conversation. I'm Mark Francis, your host for today. And we have Pastor Mark Carey with us because you were in the pulpit this past week. How are you?
And need my mind sharpened.
And need your mind sharpened. All of us can sharpen our minds, or something at least, now that we're here. And we've got a guest with us in the guest chair, Drew Sanford.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing, Mark?
Good. We recognize your last name,
Yep.
and you are, I think, the third Sanford to be on our Sermon Spotlight
All
podcast
right.
in the past.
Right.
Your father, Tim Sanford,
Yep.
he normally sits over there in the hot seat,
In the captain's chair.
in the captain's
Yeah.
chair,
Good.
with his mind sharpened, I
Uh-huh.
believe. Yeah. And your brother, Ben, has been around once or twice. Back when he was on
All
staff,
right,
he used to
yeah.
sit in the chair as well.
Good.
So welcome, and I got to get a chance to get to know you a little bit, at least have the listening audience as
Yeah,
well. How
sure.
long have you been in town now?
Oh, we moved 4 years ago. The time keeps running together.
Mhm.
I think 3 years ago we moved in. We were up in Pennsylvania most recently. Before that, Papua New Guinea.
Mm.
So, yeah, a little bit different place than what we're used to. But man, we have fallen in love with Winchester.
Mhm.
We've fallen in love with FBC and really consider this home now and excited to plant some roots. And yeah, we'll continue that process really for our girls to grow up here.
Real quick, have you gotten plugged in? Like, what areas have you served in, and
Yeah.
ministries you're part of right now?
Yeah, so last couple of falls, I have team taught with Dad, and this recently here with Hunter Mayo, teaching the Discipleship Foundations class.
Mhm.
And then other than that, it's been pretty much behind the scenes, plugged into a community group there with Van Drunens and a number of others there. And then working on just some one-on-one discipleship
Mhm.
with a couple of guys and a couple or two here in the church. So
Nice. Well, by no means does sitting in that chair mean that you're an expert. None of us are
for sure
experts
not.
here. So
Yep,
we're
for sure
we
not.
get a chance to have
No,
a
no, no.
conversation. That's the point of this podcast, where we get
Yeah.
a chance to just recap and review and just encourage one another with what God is teaching us. So I'm excited about having you
Yeah.
here to be able to do that. Mark, I'm going to turn to you.
Hmm.
We're still in the book of Mark, and I say still because it's been just a little over a year now, following Jesus. And you had a big passage to get through.
Yeah.
And I'm curious because it kind of the passage just goes straight into just Jesus unpacking this Olivet discourse here in the book of Mark. Kind of a little bit of a pause of where we are in the storyline of where he is in this Holy Week leading up to his resurrection, or death, burial, and resurrection.
Mhm.
So it made sense to cover this entire passage at the same time, right? And talking about, okay, answering the disciples' questions of what are the signs? What are the things to come? And Jesus just lets it all out
Yeah.
there, right?
Yep.
So in your sermon prep, I mean, you led our church body to go to a couple of their past sermons, or even just special events that Don Hartog did to teach on this prophetic bridge. Our typical question is, what did you leave on the cutting room floor?
Yeah.
So I'll start with that. What did you feel like that you really wanted to cover that you're like, okay, I've only got a handful of time here? What did you feel like that you wanted to cover here today with us?
Well, a couple of things. One thing is I would have liked to have done a little better job of putting chapter 13 into its context. What's Mark's point? What's the authorial intent? What's the author's intent? Why put this here? And I think as we've been saying, and if it's true that Mark is writing a discipleship manual, that is, he has an audience in mind, believers in Rome who are struggling, being persecuted, and so there's a purposeful intent of why he included what he did in chapter 13, where he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we've seen in Mark's gospel, it starts out with good news. Jesus announces in chapter 1, verse 15, repent, the gospel, or the kingdom of God is at hand. There's a sense of anticipation, and the kingdom of God. He's the Messiah. He's here. And then as you go through Mark's gospel, you find out, nothing's happening because the religious leaders, chapter 3, they want to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
The whole structure of Judaism is rejecting him, even though he's showing all the signs. The deaf are seeing, the blind are seeing, the deaf are hearing, the lame are walking, lepers are being made whole, and the religious leaders have committed the unpardonable sin. They're pushing it away.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of, it's like Mark is asking the question, what does it take for the kingdom to come? And the answer seems over and over again, as applied to the disciples: you have faith, you have to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so they cast out. Jesus cleans out the temple, the curse of the fig tree. It's all mysterious to the disciples. It's like, what's going on here? Why isn't the kingdom coming? How can the kingdom come? We got to believe. Well, why is it coming? Because they're not believing. And chapter 13 then comes, and it's like, so when will it come?
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the focus on chapter 13.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? Because you referenced Matthew 24 as well.
Yeah.
Of those two questions that disciples asked. In Matthew, it includes the phrase of what will be the sign of your coming, right? So Mark did not include that, but we've always seen the perspectives of the disciples of not getting it, right? But it seemed that if that was included in our question, what is a sign of your coming? There is some sort of knowledge that the disciples knew that he was going to be coming to set up the kingdom, and it wasn't here and now. It's going to be in the future. So what's your perspective on that potential shift of mindset of at least Peter, James, John, and Andrew, who were there with Jesus?
Like, it's fun. It's starting to dawn on them, like, this isn't going according to our plan.
Yeah,
Something's not right here, especially when Jesus starts talking about the destruction. Not one stone is going to be left another. And that's what precipitated their questions. Not one stone of this temple, because you got to have a temple. And we know that from the book of Daniel. And but I quoted Jeremiah, when it's the Jeremiah and Zechariah that talked about there is going to be a destruction of the temple prior to the Messiah's coming. And so, in their mind, they're all befuddled here because it's not going according to their plan. Israel is not accepting Jesus. They're fighting against them. In fact, things aren't going well. And then he says that the temple's going to be destroyed. So it's dawning on them, obviously. Now, they're still befuddled after the resurrection.
Right.
And we know from the book of Acts, they say, hey, is it now? You're going to restore the kingdom of Israel? And he said, no, it's not for you to know the times of the epoch. So there's this progressively revealed story.
I just find it as a very intelligent question for them to include your coming, that the way Matthew included that they somehow had a glimmer of reality of what was going to be happening there. Even though
so I think it's good to see chapter 13 in its context.
Yep. Good.
Would have liked to develop that a little bit more. There's a lot of other little specific things. I mean, I read through the whole chapter purposefully. I thought it was just good to read the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely.
My wife always reminds me, Mark, you read it too fast. You read too fast. And I said, well, I have too little time. So I had to, but I always heard people hear like 2 or 3 times more or faster than what they than what they can see.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I believe that's what. So they hear more than what you realize.
Yeah.
Sure.
They could pick up things auditorially more. But anyway, that's just my excuse. So wanted to go through that whole thing, but there's plenty of things in here that raised questions. I'm sure things like. No one knows the angels of heaven nor the Son, but the Father alone. Why doesn't the Son know? I maybe addressed that in one of the services a little bit. I mean, there's some questions in here. And of course, there's a whole, and I mentioned that there's godly people, scholars who take a whole different perspective on this, that this all happened in the first century. But that's why I really wanted to camp on Daniel.
Yeah.
It's good. What was your thoughts and takeaway? You've done studies on this passage, I'm sure, in the past. And so what stood out this past week?
No, I thought you did a great job, Mark. I think what stood out to me was two things. One was just the graciousness of the Lord. You know, he opens up, don't be deceived, because we are. And, by extension, not just the disciples, but all of us as well, as he's telling us what's coming down the pipe. We're very easily deceived and we get very easily distracted. So here, guys, let me lay this out for you as it comes 2,000 years later. These are still things to be watching for and attentively watching for, not just, hey, if they pop up, but actually keeping our eyes open. I thought you did a great job bringing out that aspect to it. And the other thing that I loved in this passage here is just the underlying, the gospel must first be preached to all nations. And, we as believers here on earth, one of the primary objectives, to know him and to make him known. Excuse me. And so I think as we contemplate what does that look like from a personal perspective for Drew Sanford, for each of us here at FBC, and then as a collective of FBC, I think it's awesome that we are so involved in missions, and yet there's still a continual, okay, what can we also do better or partner with him in what he's doing to bring his gospel to the nations? I thought you did a great job of bringing out those two aspects here from the text.
Can I bring out just one passage to unpack a little bit more that I'm sure is in some of those previous sermons? But in verse 20, unless the Lord had shortened those days, no life would have been saved. But for the sake of the elect whom he chose, he shortened the days. When you read it out loud, Mark, you used the word rescued and then you said saved. And I know you did that intentionally. So I wanted to see if you can bring out that aspect of what Jesus is referring to, of that specific time and place and days and who is being saved, and that meaning of the word saved.
So to answer that question, I want to go back to what Jesus' main point, starting in verse 14, and his a time indicator is the abomination of desolation. Mark didn't include it, Matthew did, which Daniel the prophet. So that is crucial because that tells us what Jesus has been talking about, places it in what is called the 70th week of Daniel. And if we're going to take the first 483 years in a literal sense, you got to take the last 70th week as a 7-year period of time.
Right.
We know that as the tribulation. Jesus says in the middle, or Daniel said, in the middle of the week, something horrible is going to happen, the abomination of desolation. So halfway through the 7-year period. Well, I think the reason this is a prophetic bridge, it bridges Daniel and then the book of Revelation. And you go to the book of Revelation and you see the breaking of the seals, the trumpet, the bowl judgments, and you read about that. The thing with that 70th week of Daniel, Gabriel had told Daniel, 70 weeks are decreed for your people, for the Jews. And I tried to emphasize that's a Jewish thing. Prophets of the Old Testament called this the time of Jacob's trouble. So we teach, and I think rightly so here at FBC, that the church, this age of the last 2,000 years, aren't in the picture here. This is the 70th week is for the Jewish people. And so that's who I think he's talking about, the elect, those chosen people. So everything in that last week, that last 7-year period of time, is focusing on the Jews. 144,000 Jews are going to be selected to be missionaries. There's going to be 2 witnesses that are raised up that will go to the world and share the good news, the gospel. All that is going to happen in that 70th week. But the tribulation and the great tribulation that begins at the halfway point is so intense and is so destructive that if it had not ended, when it will, and that all life would lost, even to every last human being, which means every last Jew.
Yeah.
So God's plan for Israel would have been totally then gone. Its ultimate plan. Now back in Daniel 9, where Jesus alludes to, he talked about, and I just read this quickly, I didn't expound on it, but he said 70 weeks have been decreed, verse 24 of Daniel 9, for your people in your holy city to finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, make atonement for iniquity, bring in everlasting righteousness, seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy. 6 things are mentioned. The first one there, 70 weeks have been decreed for your people to finish, and there's an article in front of this word, to finish the transgression. He's got one in mind.
Yeah.
I think it's referring to the rejection of Messiah, of Jesus. That transgression that led to the destruction of Jerusalem, everything, to bring it to completion. To finish to make an end of, then it's plural, of sins. So everything related to the rebellion of Judaism. You look at Israel today, and there's always debate. Are these God's chosen people today? And look at what's going on, the horrendous stuff that's happened that the Jews do to Palestinians, and all that debate that's going on today in the conservative circles. There's truth to it. They're godless.
Yeah.
But in that last 70 weeks are decreed to put an end to that sin and rebellion, to the sins. And it goes on to make atonement for iniquity, to bring in everlasting righteousness. That's where the millennium, Isaiah 11, so on and so forth. So that Mark 13 that you're referring to, if that is all true, and this is geared toward the Jewish people, for your people, Daniel, if that 7 years had not been cut short, God's program of the Jews would have been derailed. Yeah. And in a sense, what Satan had tried to do, even from the killing all the little David boys and all that stuff, putting the Messiah to death, that evil of all that, he would have won. But God is in control. It's all his plan. He's putting out that 70th week at his time, and it's all geared to complete his program. And I don't know, that's answer.
Yeah, in that time period, in that great tribulation,
that's right.
There's going to be that remnant of Jewish people who will be saved, who will be rescued, that Christ is going to come back and complete the whole plan and process, and they'll be saved.
And Romans 11, 25, 26 says that. Yeah. The deliverer will come from Zion. Thus all Israel will be saved. Because he goes on and says, because the how does he put it? Because the promises or the calling of God is irrevocable. The Daniel 9 is the promise.
Yeah.
As well as so I think that's why I don't think we're going to be in the picture. The church is going to be raptured out.
I was going to say that. I mean, we're going under the assumption that, yes, the rapture has taken place, which you didn't cover in the sermon. But
this coming week, we're going to talk a little bit about that in 1 Thessalonians 5, because he tells us in Thessalonians 1:10 and in chapter 5, he has not destined us for wrath.
Right.
But to be rescued.
And it goes towards the idea that until the fullness of the Gentiles comes to completion.
That's right, Luke 22.
And then the 7-year tribulation occurs.
And that also goes back to Daniel. Daniel chapter 4 was the vision of the image of gold, silver, bronze, iron. That's the times of the Gentiles. The Babylonians, the Greek, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, which are the feet and the toes, and it kind of gets mixed in clay, and it kind of continues on. We're in the times of the Gentiles. Times of the Gentiles started back in 486 BC. We've been in it. Jesus was in it. The Romans were in charge, and that's what he says. These days, the times of the Gentiles are going to continue, but when they end, then all these things will happen, and God will pick up his program with the Jews one more time.
Yep.
Yeah, because the truth is, if we were destined for wrath, then Jesus wouldn't have been enough. But He was enough. He satisfied. All of God's wrath and anger was poured out on Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to see any of that.
Yeah.
So we don't belong in the tribulation to get wrath poured out on us again.
Right.
Because that would make, again, God's
Yeah.
promises incomplete.
Yeah.
But
Or
he's
free
not
of
like
that.
Yeah, that's right.
It's fascinating just to, again, study
Yeah.
what Jesus said here, but then also combine it with Revelation and
That's
combine
right.
it with past prophecy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are so blessed to have at least this information
Yeah, right.
in our hands right here and now to then say, okay, God has been faithful to his word and his promises, and look at that 69 year, that's not years, but you know what I'm saying,
right.
the 69 period, and be
Yeah.
like, he was faithful and he was spot on, and Jesus came, and look at what he's going to do in the future. It's just, it's encouraging to know that we can live with that hope.
Yeah.
And ultimately to have that confidence that, okay, this is going to come to pass.
It's going to come to pass. And I think it's important then to understand, as Jesus said, but in those days, he says in verse 24 of chapter 13, after that tribulation, the sun will be dark and the moon will not give its light, so on and so forth. And verse 26, and then you will see the Son of Man coming in clouds with great power and glory. There really is going to be a literal return of Jesus on this earth. And as we teach it here, as I believe the Bible does, and 1,000-year reign where Christ is going to have glory and power and righteousness that is going to be set up on this. He's going to put everything back together again. And central to that is going to be Israel, because he's going to sit, as Gabriel told Mary, on the throne of his father David there in Jerusalem. David had one throne. Wasn't at the right hand of the Father in heaven right now. It was there in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And he's going to sit on that throne, and he's going to reign for 1,000 years, Revelation chapter 20. And that's as sure as when Gabriel told Daniel that from the issuing of a decree by Artaxerxes until Messiah the Prince is 440 years. Bingo, there it was.
And that, again, to me, that's just confirmation of our faith, but the real faith. I mean, we're not talking like it's a guessing game.
Yeah.
We're talking about that like it's ethereal. You know, plenty of other religions out there in the world today have this kind of just potential hope or potential faith. This is like in real facts that God has given us in his word.
Because, you use the word hope. For us, that hope is confident expectation, right? Because Christ is the author and perfecter of our faith. And we see him in those 69 weeks so faithful. In so many places everywhere in the word, we can see him be what he says he is. So then
do
now,
what he says he will do.
doing what he says he will do. And so now, as I walk through life, I can have confidence that he's also going to do what he says he's going to do, say, and in my own heart. And then coming up, what's going to happen, that will also happen. Because he does that personally for me. He wrote it down so that because it was true for somebody else, so we can see the progression, and it will still be true as it comes up.
We are so fortunate to be living in this day and age.
Absolutely.
Because we've got all of this. I mean, I read an old commentary on Daniel. This was back when we were doing the series on Daniel. It was old commentary written, I think, in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And of course, Israel wasn't a nation. That was not even in the picture.
Right.
And they just had to kind of conjecture that, well, we don't know what's going to happen, but it would seem like, 1948 they became a nation.
Yeah.
1967 they got control of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
All those things are important. I think the thing that I wanted to emphasize in the sermon, which is why I didn't get into the details, was the grounding of that passage in Daniel, but then the exhortation to be alert, and really be ready. And I think that's where we fall down, or we get caught up in so many things. I read recently, there's a couple of guys, they're Dallas Seminary grads, and they have a ministry they're called the Prophecy Pros. They have a podcast and stuff, things prophecy, where they're doing prophecy conferences that are geared for teens.
Cool.
And he said, they're packing the place out
Yeah.
because these kids are growing up in an environment where anxiety, uncertainty, everything is just crushing their, scaring them. And so prophecy is something that we should be teaching our kids, our grandkids, and because we need to be alert. And prophetic scriptures do that.
Some might ask the question, why should I study? I mean, that's it right there. That's it. So you can be anchored in truth and anchored in hope.
That's right.
And to have the confidence and not be anxious and not be worried about the world and stuff going around us. I think that is one key takeaway. But then the other, like you said, is to be alert. And that's how Jesus ends this passage here in Mark, just telling the disciples there, be alert.
Yeah.
So there's this element of confident hope, but also awareness and alertness and be ready and not being caught
that's right.
unaware, right? And I think that's part of our calling here today as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so that's where we're going next week. There's this coming weekend with First Thessalonians because he'll pick up on these same things, Paul will. And but it's interesting, I can't remember what verse it is, 9 or somewhere in there, chapter 5. He adds to hope, he adds faith and love.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that triumvirate of being steadfast in our faith, hope, and love, and then take heed and be on the alert again. So he's telling Paul, Jesus is writing that to his disciples pre-cross, in a Jewish context. Paul's writing to Gentiles, Thessalonians, post-cross. It's the same message, same hope, calling us to be people of faith, hope, and love.
So let me just clarify. So you're saying we're putting a pause in the book of Mark for this coming week to do an addendum sermon, very similar to what Tim did with an addendum on giving.
Exactly.
Taking a pause. So without giving it away, you're going there because it just seemed natural to make sense to enhance this prophecy concept?
Yeah, real quickly, when I was laying out the passages in our preaching team, I knew that the widow's mite was so full of things that we could take 2 weeks easily and add that whole concept of giving as a discipleship thing for the church. Same thing, looking ahead and realized all of chapter 13, I thought, it's going to be better just handle all of 13, but I don't want to leave myself too short. So I had built in. The other thing is I want to end on Easter where Mark ended in chapter 16.
There you go. Getting a little tidbit.
Very practical, pragmatist. So
you heard it here. So Mark ends on Easter.
It ends on Easter. It ends with the resurrection, with glory, hope, and joy, except one little problem. Verse 8, Mark ends with saying, and they were trembling or something,
all afraid or something
with fear.
Yeah.
And then 9 through 16 is a parenthetical. Some manuscripts, old manuscripts, never included it. So many scholars believe Mark's gospel actually ended with that basic concept of fear.
Interesting.
Why would he end that way? What's going on? Well, on Easter Sunday, that's where I want to go and unpack that.
You heard it here.
Yeah.
All right. We'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
Drew, any final thoughts on your end that we didn't get a chance to cover, or thoughts or questions? I mean, you got the hot seat here where you can just fire away any question you want.
Oh,
Not at me.
I didn't know I could have done that. I didn't come prepared.
Oh, look at the time.
Yep.
No, I'm okay. I'm excited to hear the rest of Mark and this next little addendum here that we're going into. It's been a lot of fun. Good learning.
Yeah.
Sharpening the mind.
Yeah,
definitely.
And we're taking big chunks. So 13 was a big chunk. 14 will be basically a big chunk. Micah Dirksen is going to take chapter 15. That's a big chunk.
Right.
And then I'll wrap up with 16.
Love it. Well, again, I know, just talking to many of you guys at FBC who are watching and listening, there's been a lot of I believe, growth in our church throughout this year of better understanding what it looks like to follow Jesus. And so having your testimonies, having your stories enhanced each and every week has been just eye-opening to just being able to be encouraged from all of you guys. And so if there's more of you that you're like, man, God's kind of poking me, be like, I think I should share this X, Y, and Z, just let us know. I'll just say, just go to the podcast landing page, fpcva.org/podcast, and you can just type in your notes and thoughts and what your testimony might be. And we would love to hear from you, because that's, again, I don't think we want to end this. Maybe we won't do it every week, but we certainly want to continue to spotlight what God is doing in your world, in your life, of what it looks like to follow Jesus. So, Drew, thanks for being here, where you've got the opportunity to share your thoughts and kind of be the voice of our congregation. Mark, thanks again for you being here. Upcoming things for us to share. We did have to postpone the baptism service, so be on the lookout for when that next date's going to be. Decisions are being made this week, so be on the lookout for that. And also, you heard this past week, announcements were sharing how there's this Partnering with Parents initiative calling Passing the Torch. And so the family ministry is putting on events for the middle school and high school students to have a father-son Friday night, and then a mother-daughter Friday night a couple weeks after that. So go to the webpage to learn more about that as well. And there's so many other ministry opportunities. I won't get into all of them. But thank you guys for being here. And again, share your thoughts with us. We want to continue to hear from you. Go to our other podcasts to learn about global missions and hear about what's going on in our family with the Fellowship Family episode and podcast there. Remember, guys, sermons aren't just heard, they're lived.